Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Chrysalis. This is your host, Kristin Matting. Today, I thought I would just do a little storytelling about where I am in my awakening process or path or journey, because I've been going through some things over the past few months, like 4 months maybe. And I thought it would be worth just catching everybody up and sharing this part of my journey. As we've talked about before, me, myself, and then me with other people, an awakening journey is unique to each person. And mine looks differently than yours would look or does look. And everybody has a different path of healing that they're on. And different tools work for different people. And different techniques are going to help different people. And it's important, if you want to embark on an awakening journey, or if you're on an awakening journey consciously, it's important to find which tools call to you and work for you. I'm going to take you back a few months. So it kind of picks up where I left off with the social anxiety discussion. So that's not available on video. That's an audio podcast. You're welcome to go and check that out. Oh yeah, if you're listening on audio, you're welcome to do so. This is also available on video on YouTube under Chrysalis Podcast. So, okay, after that adventure with going into doing the self-hypnosis, identifying some patterns with the social anxiety, and then feeling the energy, that intense container, cylinder of energy running through my body, specifically from the heart chakra up. It was just a really unique experience. So, I mean, and then coming out of that and practicing the mantra, I don't give a fuck. And then using that, practicing that, like stepping into that energetic sphere of not giving a fuck, and then practicing that mantra when I'm out. And it was really life-changing. It was a really nice, beautiful path. And I love self-hypnosis for that reason, because I'm able to get into a state of energetic alignment with where I want to go. So if I'm working on social anxiety, for example, and I want to stop giving a shit, sorry for the language in this episode. If I want to stop giving a shit or a fuck, this is how it feels. And so my higher self will show me the energetic alignment to that state and keep me there for a little bit. So I can remember what it feels like really integrate that experience and make it somatic, make it something that I can feel in my body, and then understand what it takes or how to shift back into that energetic state later. So that's a tool that I use. It's been really, really powerful for me, and it continued to be powerful. So I think I talked about in that journey this realization that I was over caretaking others' feelings, right? Or trying to, and I've known this for a while, but it was a new way of thinking about it, or at least a little bit different experience of understanding how I caretake, how when I'm communicating with people, my social anxiety stems from a place of never feeling like I'm going to communicate properly. And that stems from childhood. And we all have things like this, messages that were intended with love that we took and distorted and heard a different way. And it became a mask for me for a really long time to try and anticipate the needs of others, caretake others, make sure I wasn't hurting anybody's feelings. And what this showed me, what this self-hypnosis session showed me in the visuals I saw, and you can go back and listen to it, but what it showed me is that is not me, and I don't over caretake. It is not in my nature to protect everyone around me, but instead to allow people their own journey and to be who I am, which is somebody who is less concerned, is less anxious, is less worried about everybody else being okay, right? Assuming that everybody's okay and not needing to anticipate the needs of everyone around me. Instead, to just be in my body, in my experience, and be responsible for my own needs. And I think it's generally good advice for most of us if we have a tendency to over care for and feel like we have the responsibility to everyone else's feelings and everybody else's experience, and not allow them to own their own experience. And also to assume that somehow their experience is wrong or bad if it's not looking a certain way, right? If somebody's not happy in a moment and we feel the need to solve that for them or protect them from really messages that are intended for them to receive. And if we solve that for them, there's a chance they don't receive that message. They don't learn that growth. They don't step through the fire of their experience and become stronger for it. So I'm sure there's contrary examples, but I think in my experience and what I was seeing in that moment is that my tendency to caretake and overstep my responsibilities in terms of what I need to do for other people was a mask, right? It was something that I learned in childhood for a number of reasons. And I was continuing to do it because that's what I thought would make me a good person. Like, I will be enough when I am more like my mom and my sister, because I think they have a more natural penchant for caretaking, and maybe some of that is learned in them too. I'm not sure, but that was just my interpretation of my childhood lessons in childhood, was that I needed to be more like them, and if I'm more like them, then I'm more acceptable. And it caused a number of issues. So stepping back out of that, undoing those conditioning, those messages, and the wires that got kind of crossed during that time of my life, where I realized, and I remember having those thoughts, like, if I am just like really cautious of everything I say and hyper vigilant about always saying the right thing, then I will be a good person. And I mean, I remember very consciously having those thoughts. So yeah, stepping back out of that and realizing that may have served me at one point, but it's not serving me anymore. And it's in fact causing social anxiety. Okay. So after I had this realization, a number of things took place afterward. It was like the taking down of the walls of that mask created space to step into who I was. At the same time, so I turned 40, and I had an astrological reading because, as you probably know, if you've listened to any of my episodes, you know I'm into astrology. And I was going to do an astrology episode, and I might still, but I kept not quite feeling right. So here I am. Anyway, I had this great astrology reading by this woman named Catherine Urban, and I've seen her on my favorite podcast, the astrology podcast, and her chart, I looked up her chart, or it was actually shown in one of the episodes, and it was a similar chart to mine, and I liked her style. I thought she would be a good person to get a reading from, so I booked it for my 40th birthday. And okay, so without getting into too deep on astrology, and I think this is why I was inspired to do an astrology episode, because this is going to be a little bit esoteric and maybe difficult to understand if you don't understand the basics of astrology. But I'll try to give a very high level. Okay, so when you're looking at an astrological chart, and that chart is representing your birth time, so it's your personal natal chart, it shows a map of the planets and where the planets were at the time of your birth. And it's important to know your specific birth time down to the minute, right? So I have a birth certificate. I also have a placard, a little piece of paper that was a birth announcement or put on my bassinet. So, people could keep me straight, and it lists my birth time. So I know my birth time is 1:52 a.m. On the particular day I was born, 1:52 a.m. is the minute that the rising sign changed. And when the rising sign changes in a chart, it moves all signs to a new house. Okay. And it moves all planets to a new house because I use the whole sign house system. It changes the entire chart. It's like you're looking at a completely new person. This is why two people can be born on the same day and be completely different because they're probably not born at the exact same time in the exact same location. And there are some people out there who have those overlaps, but okay, that's neither here nor there. So anyway, at 1:52 and 4 seconds, the chart, the rising sign changes from Cancer to Leo. Cancer, having Cancer on the ascendant makes a person who is very concerned with nurturing, caretaking. It is the sign of the moon. It is the sign of the mother. It is a sign concerned with protection, self-protection, protection of their loved ones. Many more things. And so for the longest time, I thought I was a Cancer rising. And it doesn't matter. Like I can go into different websites and pull up a different chart, and some algorithms give me Cancer rising and some algorithms give me Leo rising. And if I had been born at 1:52 and 5 seconds, I would be a Leo rising. And so I had been using Cancer rising for, like I said, a long time. And because of where my planets are placed, they're kind of all clustered together. So both charts work in many ways. And so Cancer rising was working. It was a working chart. And I could track planets would touch other planets, and I would see themes show up often because also this gets a little complicated, but the ruling planets of certain signs were in mutual reception, or they were in each other's houses or in each other's signs. And so anyway, all you need to understand is that both charts work. There's a lot of overlap. And because of the way my planets are situated, both charts worked. But I hadn't tracked Leo rising planets. Anyway, I have this astrological reading with Catherine, and she immediately, I've had readings before and nobody's really pushed me on it. But because my rising sign is so cuspy, and your rising sign, the other important thing to understand about the rising sign is that it is one of the places of your basic identity. So you have your sun, your moon, and your rising, and they call them the big three in astrology. Your sun is more life purpose, your spirit, your soul, what you're here to do. Your moon is your body, and it's more about like the human DNA aspect of who you are. And then your rising sign is like your basic identity, like how you look. The moon can also influence how you look, so can the sun, but they all make up your identity, those three. They're about you. And so my rising sign, anyway, I had adopted this Cancer rising sign for many years. And then Catherine was really pushing me on whether or not I'm a Leo rising. And a Leo rising is much more, it's a sign of the sun, as opposed to Cancer, which is the sign of the moon. Though I do have strong moon energy, so it is complicated. We spent an hour and a half going back and forth about which one felt more right. And she did say that I look more like a Leo rising with the blonde hair and the cat eyes. And I've always been told I have cat eyes, and it was more prominent when I was younger. Anyway, Leos are more outgoing, more sunny. The stereotype that gets associated with Leos is that they're attention seeking. And I definitely identified with that as a child. And I really tried to shove that away and not be so attention seeking as I got older. Yeah, but it does bother me if I'm in a room and I feel invisible. It's really painful for me. So yeah, there's a lot of things that jive with Leo rising, and it shifts all my planets into new houses, and it changes the identity, and it also shows a greater connection with my father. And so anyway, and I always, as a child, really identified with my dad. And he and I are very similar in our temperaments and in our interests. Not all interests. He's not into astrology or spiritual stuff, but I just felt like a stronger connection. Like I thought I was more like my dad, I guess. And this would reflect that more. So anyway, it's funny how when you realize, when you start taking down and changing from the inside out, sometimes the outside comes to reflect that back to you, right? So the world is a mirror for our internal experience. And my internal experience was one of shifting and changing identities. And that came to be mirrored back to me in this, through this astrological reading. I mean, it's just one way it was mirrored back to me. But it was very, very literal. Like your identity just shifted from Cancer rising, because I left that astrological reading sort of assuming that I'm actually a Leo rising, or not assuming, but open to it. And then I spent a few weeks mulling it over and sitting with it. And while I think the Cancer rising chart works in many ways, I think the Leo rising chart works too. So is it just a choice that I get to make? So anyway, right now I'm using a Leo rising chart, and it's not about the chart, right? It's about what the chart represents and how what I experienced internally was reflected back to me and confirmed for me in that moment. So that might seem simplistic for you guys, for people out there, especially people who are not astrological believers or practitioners. But for me, it was a huge identity shift. And then once I adopted that Leo rising chart, all of a sudden I became much more confident. It felt like I stepped into this rebirth of a new person, and a person I had been once before, and now felt confident enough to be again, right? Felt aligned enough to be again. And so now I'm operating with this Leo rising chart. Okay. And then just a number of things happened. Of course, I meant to record again. My kids got sick. They were sick for like a month, and then I was sick, and then that cleared up. But then we went on vacation, and then we came back from vacation. And when I got back from vacation, I had fully intended to record again and like get back into things. Like that was my intention I had set for my vacation, was to come back refreshed, ready to work. And I did feel inspired, but the universe was like, we're slowing you down. We're stopping. And so I did. I just listened to the recommendation that was coming through, and I stopped. I mean, I had no choice, because once we got back from vacation, my kids got sick, and then I got sick. I completely lost my voice. Then my computer stopped working. I think in reverse order. My computer stopped working. It stopped charging, so I couldn't do this work that I'm doing right now. Then I lost my voice. Then it was Thanksgiving week. I tried to record. It was like choppy, not smooth, which I know is just an indication that it's not the right time. It's not aligned. It's not working. It's not flowing. It's like even worse than writer's block or like a creative block is spiritual block, because I have to contend with creative block and spirit and like writer's block, quote unquote writer's block, right? I'm not writing, but then I also have to contend with alignment and making sure that this is the right time to record and that I'm in the right place and that I'm inspired. And it's not really how I'd like it to work. I'd like it to be more scheduled and regimented and like consistent. And it just doesn't feel like that's on the table right now, that it needs to be more held more loosely and free flowing. So anyway, it brings me to, I do want, in that time though, a few weeks ago, it was the eclipse. And the eclipse was right on my moon. So it was right on top. Okay, there were two eclipses, and one was right on top of my moon. And that was just a few days before our vacation. And then a few weeks later, we had one that was just opposite my moon, my natal moon in Scorpio. And as I mentioned before, the moon is one placement that signifies your identity and yourself and your body. And so I did a self-hypnosis session. I like to do them around full moons, new moons, like every 2 weeks. If I could get onto a good schedule, like that's ideal. And I have been doing it, but I definitely felt like it was open. The channel was open right around that second eclipse. I think it was a lunar eclipse. And yeah, when the channel is open, what I mean by that is like my energy is running really smoothly. So I can go, I can go under the hypnosis spell easily, and I can connect easily. And so I had these 5 questions written out. I had them recorded on my phone. And then, so I did the induction, which I have recorded. It's my voice recorded on my phone. And I put myself into this hypnosis state. And then I can usually just refer back to the questions that I've already established that I want answered. And like mentally, I can think of the topic or think of the question. But in this particular session, I was not, I was not granted answers to my questions. So who I believe I talked to, I mean, there's a number of entities, energetic entities we call in, we being myself and me, the person who's doing the session in present time, and then my past self who's recorded the induction. Okay, so when I go in, there's a number of energetic entities that we call in, and my higher self is one. So the higher self is like more like the energetic body with the higher perspective. It's not subject to the petty daily woes of being a human, but it's still me, right? So that's important to me, that I'm communicating with my higher self and not always looking for answers outside of myself, even though to my ego, my higher self does feel external. I just believe that it's not. Okay. And then spirit guides get called in, but that's not always who shows up. Like I have an energetic sense of who comes forward. Myself in the future gets called in anyway. So there's a number of entities, but I'm going to say they tell me, they give me this is the message that they said, and they refers to my higher self or whomever may have been present during that self-hypnosis session. So mainly I'm referring to my higher self. And so they didn't answer any of my questions. I was like trying to get to those questions. So, but I landed on the beach, which I often do, but the water was crystal clear. So I see all of this in my mind's eye. I have a lot of visuals when I close my eyes, especially when I'm energetically connected. It's like clairvoyance, but yeah, it's just like a little movie that plays in my mind. And I know some people don't see visuals when they close their eyes. And it's not like they're in the back of my eyelids. Like I do have, what are those called? Phosphenes. Like I do see geometric shapes or like squiggly lines when I close my eyes. Like it feels like I can see energy, but this is different, right? It's in my mind's eye. So it's kind of like a dream, right? But I'm awake and lucid. And so, okay, so I'm on the beach and there's this crystal clear water, and I'm like I was trying to get to some of my questions, and it wasn't that there was a no or we're not going to talk about that. There was an absence of reply when I would go there, right? So it's important. It's an important distinction. they were unwilling to acknowledge the questions and the topics that I was putting forth. So there was something else that needed to come through that day. And how it felt. So this was another energetic one, which was really interesting, like similar to the social anxiety experience where they gave me this like canister of like it felt like a pole was stuck into my body, but energy could flow through it, and I could feel it energetically. Like that's, I don't know. It's hard to explain because it's just not an experience you have every day, right? It's not an everyday thing I can liken it to, but it's sort of like you can feel the energy of your feelings. So you can feel the energy. If you like can feel the energy between the two palms of your hands, it's like similar, but it can be directed into different parts of your body to give you a different experience. So anyway, for the social anxiety one, it was like through the center of my core from about my heart chakra up. And for this, it was just totally head. So what it felt like, they were pulling all of my attention, all of my energetic attention to this spot. Let me see, like, can you see my hand? Because I have my stupid background. It's like right around, about 6 inches above my head. And I knew some information, like there's additional chakras in the 12 chakra energy body. You have more than the 7 chakras. So it'd be considered like the 8th chakra right above my head, like right there. And so they were pulling all of my attention there. And then it felt like my head was in a vase. You know those vase? I have one upstairs. Shoot. It's a vase that's like a bowl, and then the top is like a funnel. Okay, so it's like, if you can follow that. And so it felt like my head was in the bowl, and then the funnel was up. And I don't hear words. I just get like sensations of knowing and understanding. They're like little pangs of like awareness and understanding that. And visuals. So it's like I have to interpret the visuals, but that's when the pangs of understanding and knowing just come in. It's just like I get it. I don't know how else to explain that. So so my head's in the bowl, my eyes are closed, I'm lying down while all of this is happening. And so the message essentially is like, you need to focus your energy up here, like 8th chakra, that's where you are. And I remember, and then feeling like a distinct disconnection with regular life. And being okay with that. But it was like a serious recommendation. The recommendation is like, you need to disconnect from regular life and live up in the 8th chakra. That's where you live now. And that's a shift from what I had been told in the past, which was to focus on the heart chakra. Meditate there, meditate there, meditate there. And now it's like meditate up here, meditate up here, meditate up here. And so I was like, okay, but I still have to like pick up my kids from school, and I still have to go through life. So, and there was no reply. It was like, so that doesn't change the recommendation. And then I was trying to understand why. And the only answer that came through is, that is who you are. That is who you are. You are up here. And you just, that's where you're going to live from now on. So I spent the next few days after that, like in meditation every day, consistently meditating on the 8th chakra. But it did leave me with a bunch of questions. And I'm really wondering if anybody out there has received this sort of message, or felt like, in their process of awakening, they've shifted their attention from the bodily chakras to the higher chakras, and what that call is about. And I assume it will be made clear, or not, and it doesn't really matter either way. I will continue to live my life, but I'm curious about it. So if anybody has information about the 8th chakra specifically, I did read some. I'm not sure about the sources, but like it's the soul chakra. Was what a few things said, and I don't know where these people are getting their information. So it's like, it's hard to know. Like, do I just accept what some random website on the internet says? So anyway, I'd like to hear from more people, more sources about their direct experiences with meditating on that chakra and what that's done. But it was another like direct shift. And I don't want to say it was a second awakening. I did feel a shift though, right? A rising up, a leveling up of sorts. And what that feels like when you have a download or a shift like that, if you're curious and if you haven't had one, I mean, I'm sure we've all had them, right? But for some people, they're slower. And so you integrate it much more over like a longer period of time. And for these upgrades that I'm having, they're like swift. Okay, so the best thing I can do is explain, like, if you watched a movie when you were 20 and then you went back and watched it at 30, often we see that movie in a completely new way, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that before, because just we bring greater life experience to our observing and our experience of those storylines. Also, we're just sitting in a new place in our life. So yeah, we just see it with new eyes, and so that's it's like that experience, but it's about your life, and it's about your life almost overnight. Right? So all of a sudden you're seeing the same situations, or it even works for movies. Like I could have watched a show yesterday that hit me in this one way, and now I'm watching the show today, and it's like I can't even with that show. Like I can't, I'm just seeing it in a completely different way, or it just feels out of alignment all of a sudden. And so one of the gifts that I did receive and integrate after my first awakening was a strong sense of alignment, right? So like I know that that's in alignment with where I'm at and where I want to go. Yes, and I can tell I feel a restriction around this over here that doesn't feel in alignment anymore, and so I have to distance myself from that. I don't have to, I choose to, because I would like to continue moving in the direction of wholeness and integration and awakening and ascension. So that's my choice, is to move away from the things that no longer feel aligned. Yeah, so I had that another bump in the awakening, in the process of in the process of my spiritual journey and awakening, and suddenly I was seeing things in a much more detached manner. But then I've dipped back down. I dipped back down last week, and I was like, what? Or just a few days ago. Of course, hormones do play a role, and I am still human, so I still go through things, right? And I experience the world, but it's gotten to the point now where I've had enough similar experiences to know that I don't have to play that game anymore. So in an example, like there are some people in my life that I struggle with relationally. Like it just, I love them, but I am constantly triggered by them. Really often. And I feel a lot of anger, and I feel mistreated. And I'm probably mistreating them in ways, right? But I've worked through these issues with these same people, and it's like they're such a gift in my life because they trigger me in that way that affords me to continue to do my work. But I have questioned constantly, should I just walk away from this? Should I just walk away from this? Should I just walk away from this? Is it serving me? If I'm constantly hurt, if I'm constantly triggered, is it serving me to stay in this relationship? And I've tried to walk away, and then I go back, and then I oscillate back and forth, and it's very confusing. And so anyway, I was in sort of a really low emotional state a few days ago, and I decided to do another self-hypnosis. And this self-hypnosis was all visuals. It wasn't that much energetics. So what I experienced with this one is so the visuals where I'm in a jail cell. The jail cell is brick. There is somebody in the adjoining jail cell just across the way, and there is a metal grate that they can communicate with me through and stick things through. And so I'm in this jail cell. I don't have a lot of I didn't have a lot of visuals about the jail cell itself. It was probably 10 by 5. And this friend who's in the jail cell next door hands me this candy, chocolate. It's like a Tootsie Roll with black spots on it, dark spots on it. And I eat it and I blow up like a balloon, like Violet Beauregard from Chile. Why can't I say the words? Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Okay, so I'm like in my like blow up spacesuit and I start rising into the air. I'm like, okay, ascension, right? Rising. Okay, I'm in a jail cell. That's the conditioning, the prison of our minds and the conditioning. That's how I'm interpreting this, right? Okay, so I'm in a prison, but a friend is giving me a chew, like candy, chewy candy, and I eat it, and then I blow up. Sorry, drum cymbal, and then I'm at the top of the jail cell, and all of a sudden I start having this panic moment and major anxiety because I'm at the top. I know I'm at the top. I need to bust out of here. I need to get out of this jail cell. How do I get out? And like, there is so much fear about what I'm going to see on the other side. There's like fear on multiple levels, fear that I won't get out, fear of that once I get out, I won't notice a difference. It will be the same. Fear that once I get out, like I don't know how to create my own world. Fear of, fear that I won't get out. I think I already said that one. Okay, so I think that's about it. But anyways, all of these fears coalesce into this moment of like panic. I'm like, in this visual in my dream, like, not a sleep dream, my waking dream. But so I'm like panicking, and then all of a sudden I remember to breathe, like calm my body back down and try to understand. It's like, okay, that is very much what's happening. It's like I get to this point in the ascension process or in the awakening process, and I start freaking out that I'm not going to get to the next level, or that and I'm scared of getting to the next level both. It's like, so I'm in this no man's land, and I'm sure I'm blocking advancement, but I'm not willing to go back. So I'm just like, I have to just like hang out like as a balloon at the top. And then the top of the jail cell, I should have described this sooner, is like a white sheet. It's like paper or gossamer or a sheet. It's more like a sheet, but very thin, but I can't see. It's opaque. I can't see what's on the other side, but it's very thin. And so it feels like I'm at the top of this jail cell, and all that's keeping me in the jail cell is this sheet. Oh, and then I see a visual of myself, like when I get bored or don't know what else to do, I dip back down and play back in the prison, which is like going backward and like playing in with these triggers that I've been dealing with forever that I don't need to do anymore because I know how to solve them. I know how to get out of them. It's just like I get bored or I don't know what else to do is really how it feels. Like I don't know how to move forward. So I just dip back down thinking maybe it'll spring me back up. And then I end up back at this sheet at the top of the jail cell, ready to emerge, ready to get out of the jail. And so anyway, but the trying doesn't work. It's like I see myself like at the edges of the jail cell where the sheet connects, like trying to figure out how to get out. And then, okay, so the message is like, you just got to sit, like you just got to wait, and you got to stay up, right? Because the more I stay up, the more I'll push on the sheet. And eventually the sheet will get so thin that it will split and break or open. And I also had this other thought that like, before you meet the one, I don't even know if I believe in the one, but before you meet the one, people just say like, you'll know when you know. And if you don't know yet, then the answer is no. And I'm not sure that like holds water for all situations in all relationships. I'm sure it doesn't. But that was sort of my experience. It's like once I finally knew, then I knew, or I was in the right place to get married, the right spot in my life. But I think the part of it that I want to apply to this is like, I'm assuming that I will know when I have gotten to the other side of the sheet. It will be apparent. And there's also a dialogue in my brain that is, I have already emerged through the sheet, and I'm sure in terms of like quantum science I have, and all time is existing now. So there is a version of me that is on the other side of the sheet, and I'm no longer in the prison cell. Okay, and so then I've had these dreams in the last few nights. Last night, I remember it pretty vividly. So it was a train track, and again, it was showing me that I'm afraid of what is around the corner, right? Like that. Here's the car. The train is in a shape, like the train track is in a shape like this, kind of like a rectangle or a square with rounded track edges, and the train's coming around, and I can feel just in my body, in this like a sleep state, I can feel the fear of not knowing what's around the corner. So I know that there's fear there in my body about what's coming next, and what is available, or what will happen and what will change. And mostly that's around my family, because I don't want anything to happen to my kids or my husband or our family, Anyway, so I'm scared of what's around the corner. And then the next visual that accompanied that is like, so the understanding is that the fear is blocking right progress. And I'm sure that's true. And I have fear of failure, of not breaking through, but then I also have failure of succeeding. And that's a very weird place to be in. And so I'm just letting the fear be there, right? I'm not in denial, because what we resist persists. So I allow the fear to exist. Hopefully we'll process that fear out. On the other side of the coin of fear is excitement. So I can use excitement, and I am excited for what's next and the next stage of my process, and I am ready to move on. Like, I don't need to keep learning the same lessons. I do feel like I have a level of achievement and understanding in my processing, my emotional processing and triggers, and I'm ready. Like, I'm excited to move on so I can be in that space. But really the call to action is to do nothing. And that's what I keep understanding, is like cracking the whip is blocking and causing confusion. And so I need to just stop. And then I heard the words, or heard the understanding of like, keep your head down, like be diligent in your process of doing nothing, which is kind of funny. I think it sounds a little contradictory in terms, but so I worked out this morning, and I'm like, there was also a call to discuss the process. So here I am, I'm talking about it. I don't know if this is going to be interesting to anybody, but it doesn't really matter, because I'm here in service of my process. And yeah, so that's kind of where I am today. I feel like I'm on the precipice of a big change, of the next big stage of the awakening process. If I disappear into another dimension, if I disappear after this, I would assume I'm in another dimension. That probably sounds crazy. Hopefully I don't disappear. I'm excited about what's to come. I'm scared of not achieving it. And yet it's like that mystery of the unknown is really also holding me back, that fear of the unknown. So I will allow it to be, and hopefully move on and stay in a state of excitement. I know that whatever change is going to happen, it will happen. Like, I know that. So I don't need to make it happen. I don't need to chase anything anymore. I can just allow it to unfold. That's a little tricky. It's hard. It's not something in our Western society we're very good at. So anyway, I will let you know how it goes. I would also really love and invite the input of others who have been in this stage of awakening. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Just leave them in the comments or contact me on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, all of it. So thanks for being with me today. I'm sure there's things I forgot to say, But that's what happens when you don't write things down. Okay. I love you and take care of yourself and enjoy the journey.